Okay, so 7 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. We have a quorum. Welcome everyone to the West River Modified Union Education District meeting. For anybody that does speak tonight, please identify yourself for the camera. If you have any questions, direct everything towards the chair. Do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda? Anything on there that needs to be, or anything not on there that needs to be? Okay. If you're a member of the public and you're here to speak to something that's on the agenda, we'll recognize you and you can speak during the time on the agenda. If you're here to speak to something that's not on the agenda, now would be your time. Anyone? Yes? I'm
Sue Jones. I have sent correspondence. I don't know if that is relevant.
Right, the correspondence is right after members of the public.
So I'd be willing to speak.
Okay. Well, your correspondence is a little premature for the board because we have not seen anything about what you're talking about. So I guess I would say that we'll address your concerns after we've actually seen what's being presented to us tonight. And I would say that your time would be under the budget session because that's where that falls. Unless you want to do something other than that. Okay. Correspondence, I know I and probably more of you got a letter from Sue Jones talking about, okay, well, I don't know who all got it. I know Al got it because he forwarded it to me, and I got it. And it will be posted on our website, and we have copies if you need them. Essentially, it deals with that the FACS program at Leland Gray is being reduced, and there are, I assume this will come out in the budget that we're going to hear about at some point, and there are some student testimonials and a letter talking about the benefits of FACS. So that'll be posted on the website. Anybody who wants to see it now, I have copies. And we'll again, probably once, it doesn't, until we see the budget presentation, it doesn't, I have more questions than answers. Anybody want a copy?
Sure, if you get extras.
Here you go. Okay, new business. First, we have a Journey East update with Bob and Jesse Riemenschneider. Oh, and it's projected?
Ooh, fancy. Yeah.
All right. I forgot to grab them. I'm sorry, your time has expired.
Is there a 7-year-old? Is there a 7-year-old nearby?
Ken, long stick?
Yeah, where's mine?
Yeah.
There you go. Perfect. Okay. We're just gonna hit the power button here.
Yeah.
Keep that handy. We're gonna turn on.
The sound.
I don't think you want to leave this in front of me during a meeting.
Maybe for
I agree with that.
It's got a spiky thing on it. That's for when you're rolled
So
out.
while this is connecting, just to give you guys a little bit of, is there a poll noise?
Yeah.
Just to give you guys a little bit of perspective on where this is coming from. So if you don't know, Jesse Riemenschneider, Jesse is associate teacher here at Leland and Gray, and with the retirement of Tom Connor from the Journey East program, she is the director of the Journey East program. And we're going to talk a little bit, because it is budget season, we want to talk a little about some of the implications of the Journey East program may have on your deliberations on the budget, and give you some information about what it is if you don't know. So I'm going to turn it over to Jessie and let her take it from here, and I'll answer questions as they come up.
Thanks. So for some of you who may not know what Journey East is, I wanted to at least give an overview, because I know some of you know what it is really well, and others might not really have an idea or know what it is currently. So what Journey East is, it's a Sino-American Cultural Arts Exchange. What that means is that every other year we send 14 to 16 students to China where they put on a performance that they create. As part of that experience, they're really in sort of like a Journey East Academy for the entire second semester of that year. They study Asian language, so Chinese cultural studies. They take band and chorus, and they also do a production workshop where they create a performance that is unique to the group, and they then take that performance, perform it all around China. So that's what sort of happens on our end. So next year is a Journey East year where we'll be sending this delegation to China. On the second year, which we just got finished with, we have a delegation from the Arts College, or the Inner Mongolian Arts University. They changed their name. The Inner Mongolian Arts University that comes to Vermont and performs all around. So that's kind of like in a nutshell of what Journey East is. And so it really is a 2-year cycle, which I think is important when looking at budgets. Sort of to give you just a sense of what the benefits of Journey East, several years ago, Tom had me compile like a thing of reflections from students from like the beginning of the program to now. And so I just kind of picked a few quotes. Some of these students I know, some of them I don't. But what they said was Journey East, however, was more than a cultural awakening for me. It was an educational revolution, which I think really speaks to the way Journey East is set up, where students have this sort of like fully immersive experience where their classes are directly relevant to something they're going to go and experience. They have the experience, and they really have this sort of really deep learning experience that they don't always necessarily have. Journey East pushed me into the world, and I recommend every young person to have a similar experience. It's from Janina Gasparo-Beckstrom, who I actually did know. And thanks to Journey East's program, I was able to find a voice, a sense of belonging, and grow tremendously at a young age. So I think these are just like some historical views of the program, but I also had students, when we got back from China last year, make a program that make some videos to sort of promote the program and speak a little bit about what they thought sort of the value of Journey East was. So I wanted to show you guys that, and hopefully there's volume.
Sounds like funny, but I feel like that was like a really big part of what I learned was like it's like okay to be yourself, but also that just like being yourself can create some like really positive things, especially in this show where it's just like essential to not feel self-conscious.
What's special about this program is that you are like forced to work with this group of like people for an entire like semester. It's the same people, and you really get to meet new people and create new friendships and bonds with these people, and you like need to support each other and be there for each other throughout the entire experience, including the month you're gone. Also, like, not many programs offer like a creative arts trip to China.
One thing I learned from Journey East was that the world's a lot bigger than Vermont. Well, obviously, I knew prior to that, it was obviously more than just Vermont, but I didn't realize how different like all the cultures were, and traveling to all the different parts of China really showed how different everything can be just in a different country, going from Beijing to Inner Mongolia to Chongqing, Kaili, see like everything.
So what I think that students gain from Journey East is a tremendous amount of experience with working as a group in order to sort of problem solve and really push themselves to go outside of their comfort zone. We have so many students that come here and have never been on an airplane or have never been outside of the country or never been away from their parents. And this is a month-long experience where they're with a group of students and they have to work together as a team to put on a show. They have to really push their comfort levels because they are in a new country with so many new experiences that it really pushes them to have to learn from these experiences and learn on the road. And so I think that the value of Journey East and what students gain from it is a confidence in themselves, that they are able to push themselves out of their comfort zones.
So that was a student video, and really, oh, there it is. I was like trying to find the bottom. I see it. Sorry, it's because the. Why are you not? Is it like up? There it is. So part of the reason for showing the that benefit in particular is I really thought it was important to hear what students' perspectives were on Journey East, as when we're looking at sort of the funding for it. This is a program that's been around for 19 years, and it's been having this sort of impact from like the early 2000s all the way up to now. So we have this sort of like wide breadth of testimonials saying like Journey East has changed my life, or even these kids who just got back within like weeks were saying how profound of an experience this was. And so that's for the students who like go on the trip. The flip side of this on off years is that we also have the Mongolian delegation, or the Chinese delegation from Inner Mongolia, coming to our school and getting to share their sort of culture with all of our students, with our community. We bring sort of these people in, we take them into our homes, and that has been sort of like just a simple sharing of culture for anyone who has hosted. It's a really interesting and sort of awesome experience to have. And so that's one way. The other way is that they travel all around the greater New England area and Vermont doing workshops. And I was particularly moved this year by looking at all of the workshops they did with our students here at Leland and Gray, and how the experience, watching students who were probably never going to go to China, but have this like, do you know that we could play basketball together and understand each other? And I was like, yeah, and that's like pretty cool. And so I really think that the Journey East program is more than just the trip to China, and it's not really just a trip to China, there's a lot more to it, but really understanding that there's a lot of components to Journey East, and it really brings a richness to this community. It's also one of the few times where the entire SU is involved. So we had many elementary school students come here and get to see the performance that this delegation brought to us, and sort of share that with the high school and the middle school and the elementary schools all at once. The other thing is that our Journey East students go and visit all of the elementary schools to do their performance, and it's kind of a really positive, meaningful thing that our district does and is able to do. So now to the fun part, funding. So historically, Journey East was originally founded by the Freeman Foundation, which had offered us a grant as part of the University of Vermont's Asian Outreach program, Asian Studies Outreach program. And so that was great. That is how this program got started. That's how Tom became involved in this program. But that grant ran out, I think, in around 2010. So we've been sort of moving on to phase 2, that we're calling it, of our funding, which is we have Chinese tuition-paying students that when they would come to Leland and Gray, their tuition money would go directly to supplement Journey East and sort of keep it going so that we could continue this program. Now, the problem that has come up with that when we started doing this in 2011 was the fact that competition from other schools weren't very high at this point. We were sort of on like the cutting edge of bringing Chinese students in. Since then, it has gotten incredibly competitive to bring Chinese students, as well as our tuition compared to schools, to what we're offering, is not really competitive. And so we've lost a lot of students, a lot of Chinese students coming here because of that. The other part is because we're a public school, we can only offer a visa for 1 year for them to attend Leland and Gray. So even if they absolutely love the school, we have to send them somewhere else after a year. So it really has turned out not to be a super sustainable way to fund. So currently, this is kind of where we're at. So this is not like complete dire straits. We currently have enough money to run the next cycle of Journey East, so the next 2-year cycle. But after that, we do not have a sustainable method of funding. The Chinese tuition-paying students are not sustainable or really reliable. It was kind of a year-to-year to see what we got. So we're okay in that realm at the moment. But here's kind of where we're at. So we had Chinese tuition money that made up about $40,000 of revenue over 2 years. You have me, 0.5 FTE staff from Leland and Gray. And the school board has been contributing $31,000, and student tuitions, the students who get into the program total, contribute $32,000. So that's how we've been funding it for the last 2 programs. Yep.
Just to clarify, the tuition money is an annual, not every other year.
Yeah, annual. Yeah, so that's annual. The student tuition money is annual, and the $31,000 is every year. But that is, at different points, has been a little bit less on off years, but 31 has been the general amount that we've needed. So we have a little bit on off years, we have a little bit of a cushion to when we go into year 2 that we still can fund the whole program. Now the problem is, again, we lost the Chinese tuition money, so we have $40,000 of lost revenue. And with Tom's departure, I've been kind of running this show all on my own, and we kind of need at least another person. Tom was in a different place in his career when he took this on, and it would be helpful to have at least one other person to be able to sort of rely on that this is also their thing, because I am also a teacher here, and so that's a little tough. So
and
that's
the other piece of that too is that Tom and Jenny were a team.
Yeah.
And Jenny was the artistic director and Tom was the director of the program, but they were able to kind of work together even in the times when the program wasn't running. Whereas we paid a former alum actually to come be our artistic director this past year, but when the academy ended, she left, so she's not here to help do some of the planning and work along the other way. So that we're a little short.
Yeah, we're a little short manned. So that's kind of where we're at. And the big question that's the reason I'm here today is to sort of ask what's next. I've been trying really hard to kind of come up with other ways of funding. I've been meeting with Bob and Lori, and we're kind of at a little bit of a crossroads coming up, and we wanted to sort of let you know where Journey East was at. This was the first full 2-year cycle where I have been in charge of it, and so understanding the whole system now that we've reached the end of it, kind of on to next steps. And so that's questions. I can answer them best I can. Yes, Al.
I'm sure you've already sought it out, but there's grant funding is probably not available.
Well, I would say that I don't know that we've done a thorough search for that. One of the shortcomings of the position not having the staff, as she says, that she's also teaching here. And so there's not necessarily the ability to do that. And so one of the options that we explored as phase 3 could be, do we hire a grant writer to go out and look for those things and bring in that revenue? But it involves an offset of money, an expenditure to kind of make some money back. That's one possibility. We've talked about exploring the idea. One of the things, the competitive advantage that the private schools have over us, other than the 4-year program versus a 1-year program, is housing and weekend programming and all these things for these kids that can come. Do we want to get an apartment building and staff it and have like a sort of a mini private school environment where I mean, that's going to cost money to do and explore. Jessie doesn't have the time, the ability to do those explorations thoroughly at this point with her other employment here. So I think that's part of the question, is like, well, that's part of the next step, is what is it? Does it change? You know, on your 7 to 12 values, you have Journey East up there. Without something changing, we'll get one more cycle, and then there's not going to be the finances to support it unless something changes. So that's what we wanted to bring your guys' attention to.
Do you have a question?
I have a question. So Jesse, or Bob, of course I'm a huge supporter of this program and have been forever. And I got on the board in 2000, the year that we started this program, and it's been a fantastic program for our school and for our students and for our community. We were sort of cutting edge, and other people started to jump into this and do it. So my question is there competition in the area of other schools in our region offering similar programs? And if they are or are not, have we thought about collaboration with other high schools or regional schools so that we can try to merge our resources and find a path forward?
I've had conversations with a couple area schools, both public and private, around that endeavor, and I think one of the things that more from the public side was, you know, they're not, I mean, that $40,000 deficit isn't going to be fulfilled by that. The challenge to this is, I think when this program started, we would bring in kids from other schools to come attend the program, which at the time, under law, we could charge tuition for them, and that would help offset some of those dollar amounts. Now, with high school choice, the money doesn't follow the kids, and so we had two students, well, I guess really one that was a high school choice student this past year, and she came and paid the same $2,000 to do the trip like anybody else did, and we didn't benefit financially from her arrival here, whereas that was different back in the day. So that's one significant change. At any rate, one of the conversations I had with those schools was the idea of maybe swapping kids for different kinds of programs. Green Mountain has a wilderness academy, which is like an academy model, similar kind of idea of experiential learning. They don't go anywhere. I mean, it's wilderness. They use their property in Chester. And the idea of like trading kids slots, you know, for that is something that we talked about, but no money changing hands. So yeah, we can do that. That helps us fill if we don't have the numbers, but it doesn't help with a $40,000 deficit. Similar conversations with Burburn around the Mountain campus and what sorts of exchanges could be done there. But again, we're really talking about kid-for-kid swaps, not financial layouts. But that's the extent of the conversations I've had so far.
And as far as programming, there are other schools that travel to China, but none that do it in the way that we do. So our ability to do sort of like the fully immersive educational piece has been pretty unique, and the length of time that we go. I think also the performance piece. So there are other schools that have sort of language trips to China, but are not sort of as embedded in the curriculum, and the performance piece of Journey East makes it really unique. I think with some of the kids talking about how that sort of like group dynamic piece is what really sort of solidifies them and becomes this like big growing experience while they're on the trip. So I think it is still unique. While more people are doing similar things, it's still sort of it's still kind of on its own.
That's interesting.
Good, go ahead.
What's and sorry if I didn't pick it up from this. Once this 2-year cycle, once the next 2-year cycle is done, what's the total? What's the price tag?
So what was the cost to run the program sort of from scratch?
Right.
So it would be that $40,000 deficit plus the $31,000 local contribution that's already been in the budget on a regular basis, plus the cost of half of Jessie salary benefits. So
and that's for
Bill did the math on this at one point.
It's about $250,000 over a 2-year period.
Correct.
And does that include?
Go ahead.
Does that include the additional staffing help that has been requested?
No.
And we would anticipate that to be in the, I think, probably in the neighborhood of $10,000. Maybe 50, but It's not a full-time,
It's
so we're not
part-time.
talking
Yeah,
about a
it's a
full-time
part-time,
staff
yeah.
member, we're talking about like a part-time thing.
Somebody that can, yeah.
Support,
Focus.
to co-direct.
So in all your discussions, have you come up with sort of your preferred next step? So is there an, I mean, there's information there, but is there an ask or a sort of like, this is what we'd like to try, but we're willing to keep working? I mean,
Maybe a rich benefactor will see this.
yeah.
That's the idea.
A realistic one.
Yeah.
That's realistic.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that based on what we've experienced, I've experienced it on a personal level. I've hosted, my son's been a participant in the trip. I've seen firsthand the benefits of it for the kids that go as well as the community. I would love to see this continue. I think this is one of the things that we do that makes us unique.
Mm-hmm.
Understand it's fairly pricey endeavor, and with the grant money currently as we know it not out there, grants are usually good for startup things, not for continuing things. So that's the other challenge to that. I think we would like the board to think about how, as my famous quote that Mike keeps reminding me about was when we talk about values, like there's degrees to which we value things. And how much do we value this? Is this something the community values enough to put that kind of money into it, or is it not? And I think that's, we hate to dump it on you guys, but it's sort of, it's a pretty big price tag, and there's a lot of benefits. And there's a lot of cool, put Leland and Gray on the map, I think, as far as this sort of thing. Project-based learning before there was a project-based learning,
Right.
Right. Oh, I don't disagree. I've hosted for a lot of years. Tuition students, Mongolian students, Chinese students, teachers. So yeah, I fully understand the value of the program. And we can, so we don't have to do anything in this budget necessarily, but going forward, that's something we have to talk about. Al has.
So this just isn't our board. So we could also look to WCSU for that grant writing capacity. I don't know if there's an appetite for that to not just cover our board, but everybody within the WCSU.
Talked about it a lot over the years.
Yeah.
We've had proposals. Not sure we had a proposal under you, but
have
we've had
not,
it under
yeah.
every other superintendent.
To get a grant writing person at
Yeah.
WCSU level to
To
write for
employ
all of
one.
us, yeah. We have
Yeah.
talked about it.
Joe, just to, you mentioned that there's not really an obligation for you right now in this budget cycle, and I would just say, that's fine. You saw Jesse talking about the sustainable model for the next 2-year rotation. Part of this model has relied on an annual contribution of money to kind of sustain it, and what we're telling you is the Chinese students are not here. So if you don't have to put anything in, we are covered for the next 2-year cycle. But if the board had an appetite to put something in to help continue to build that,
Right.
that would certainly, we're not going to turn that down. But that's something, so we don't want you to just be like, no, we don't need to do anything right now. We want you to understand that that's part of what would be, we have lost revenue that could be made up with extra money. But I just want to make sure we're clear about that.
Understood. Yes, Kelly?
Jesse, how do you gauge student interest?
For this upcoming group.
And in the past few years, have you seen, has there been an increase in interest, more competition, decline?
So for students to get into Journey East, I think that in this upcoming group, I've heard more interest than I had in the previous group. And I think that's largely because last year was, it was kind of a weird year as I was in, it was like Tom had handed over the reins and it was my first year as director. And so you used to have sort of 3 adults that everyone knew recruiting kids to come do it, and then we went to having 1 because we weren't sure Carly was going to do it. So I think between last year and this year, I think the numbers have gone up, at least from my sense of sort of 9th graders. I'm not going to know for sure until they actually show up at auditions and sign up, which will be in February is when the auditions are, but applications come in starting in January. So I think the interest is still there. I've had many students approach me, and particularly after the visit from the delegation, there was a high level of interest. I also think that the growth of our music programs has really helped in the last couple of years, having more students that feel confident enough in their performing abilities that they could do Journey East. So I think we're on sort of an upswing, is my sense.
Bob, you have.
To that end, I'll say we also use it as a recruiting device when we go to Floodbrook to try to get high school students who are tuition students, or to Dover, or to Marlborough. So the places, or Warsaw for that matter, but to try to use it as a mechanism to get kids to come here for tuition kids, that's something we do use.
Right. Any more questions, thoughts?
Come on, rich benefactors.
Thank you, Jesse. Bob.
Thank you, Jesse.
Somebody, right? People. Somebody.
Take our whole budget and play the next big Powerball.
Oh, I think we will. So, okay, moving right along. Again, thank you very much for that presentation. You know, I can remember when my daughter was in 2nd grade, she saw her first Journey East performance, and she came home and she said, "I'm going to China." And she did. Not with Journey East, but she did go to China. It just didn't work out. But, you know, it's an incredible experience for, you know, like you guys said, the kids that don't go to China still get an immense benefit out of this. You know, the accessibility to those kids. And half of the delegation that comes now seems to be the high school kids that are at the Mongolian, or the Inner Mongolian Arts College. So it's absolutely peers, and they're just kids together for a month, and you know, it's really fun to watch. I haven't been on the inside for a few years, but it's really fun to watch, and I think beneficial to everybody. So, all right, you wanted to talk about the annual report, Bob.
Well, I think you want to talk about the annual report, Jim.
It says you do on the agenda, but sure.
Sure. Well, so on an annual basis, Leland and Gray has published an annual report, which reports on the previous year's activities at the school, as well as publish the new budget for the voters to see before the annual meeting and to vote. So as we were starting to do our legwork for that this fall, we started thinking, like, wow, the budget isn't going to be a Leland and Gray budget. It's going to be a West River budget. What does that mean? So I raised the question with Lori and Bill, and they said we should come here and talk about that, because this document, and I know the towns all do annual reports as well. They have their school budgets in it, but those are going to be different too. There's just one of those things that is there going to be a West River annual report? And if so, what's that look like, and who's involved with it, and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to make sure you guys were thinking about that, because we were, and I didn't want to create a Leland and Gray one that would be a separate entity, because it seems like it's kind of a strange thing to do, since it's now a new
Right.
group. So,
Right. So we probably should publish something, you know, as the West River Board, don't you think? Board?
Yes.
What?
We've got to put our budget information out somehow.
Yeah, we've got to put our budget information out there somehow. You know, it may not have some of the, you know, I don't, the school annual report section of a town report is a lot less, you know, than the Leland and Gray annual report in terms of staff and stuff like that, at least in my experience. It's simply the budget. So the West River annual report might look different in terms of what's included in there, but we need to get our budget information out there somehow. For this budget cycle, we probably are too late, right?
we usually start about now. What we do is we collect items of interest that happened from the previous school year from staff, and we just write a narrative that goes along with it. Central office collaborates with us to publish staff names and FTEs and that sort of thing. And the audit report is usually in here, which maybe there wouldn't be for this year. The West River doesn't have an audit report,
right.
But the budget would be in there. Maybe it's going to be smaller. Maybe there's no section reporting out from each school. Maybe there is. It's really what you guys want it to be. Whatever you think the taxpayers want to see as part of that. So we've had projections around student enrollments. All the warnings are in here.
So what do we think we want to publish, folks?
I have a question.
Sure.
Is there any way we can gauge how often people actually look at this? Like, do we mail them? Does the post office
So-
recycling bin fill up with these things?
In
Like,
recent
how do
years,
we-
we
how do we-
printed way fewer of them because we put it online as well.
Right.
So it's a PDF, we put it online, so it's hard, I mean, we haven't measured the hits on that.
Okay.
We did print
I forget.
under 500.
Yeah.
300
Put them
maybe.
in the stores.
We did distribute to stores and town halls,
Town offices.
like a box each, and then when they were gone, they were gone.
Okay.
And we had a box at the annual report, at the annual meeting to hand out if people wanted them.
But they went, people picked them up?
We don't go back and get them, so I have no idea.
So they might have got recycled?
They may have been, some of them may have been
Okay.
recycled. I think the assessment of how many to do would be something you guys would, I mean, it costs money to print, we have
Yeah.
these printed professionally up in Springfield, and,
Yeah.
you know, so. But we produced it internally using Microsoft Publisher, so it wasn't like it was we handed them a PDF and they did the printing for us.
So it's been a really long time since we mailed those. I mean, a really long time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we do a 6-page budget summary that we do mail in bulk mailing. So it's a very brief summary of that that goes out to all mailboxes, and it prompts people to go pick it up or go online to get it. That's why we've reduced the number and more people have access to the online version. But from my opinion, I think we should, it's really important for us to find a path forward to make sure we're reaching out to our constituents in the best way we possibly can. We're not going to do the same thing. We're going to look different. We're in an interim year, so next year it might be completely different. But I would hate to not do anything in this 1 year that's in between. I think we should come up with some modified version of it.
Yeah, agreed. You know, certainly publish the budget and, you know, maybe get a short report from, you know, the building principal in each school of sort of highlights of the year. I know you write a letter for that.
As do you.
Bill writes one for the WCSU and I had written one for Leland and Gray. Just kind of hitting the highlights in each building, and it'd probably be a smaller report, but it'd get that same amount of information out there. And I mean, I think it's fair, since it's our first year, to include something in there, you know, like something you didn't see in here, let us know that you want to see, and we can sort of develop it as we go along.
Can I ask another?
Sure.
Lori,
I
can
know
we
you have a question,
link,
sorry.
can we put a link in there for audits? I mean, it's really important that people have access to audits, so we could have audit online and have them link to it.
Right, and on the West River site, there can be a link. for
Right,
the
so
audit,
that's just one more
Or it
way
can
for
be
people to get out and see the audit. I mean, the audit's really important, I think. Audits. in this
Audits,
case.
it would be
Yeah.
This
multiple.
year it'll
It'll
be
be audits this year and then audits.
Next year it'll be audit.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
You had a question?
It was just an FYI, speaking to your question about who reads these things. Was it 2 or 3 years ago, Townsend didn't print a town report, and there was almost a mutiny, so people do read them.
I was just curious about, not a lack of value in it. I was just curious about the printing of it mostly, not necessarily about the document itself.
Yeah, I think it's less printed these days and more online. We sent it out as an email link. You know, it was published on like the Leland and Gray website and sent out by board members and things saying, you know, here it is. And, you know, I had people ask me for the link.
Yeah, actually,
I've had
that
that.
year they didn't print, we printed our own Townsend Elementary School report.
Thank you, Cliff.
Yeah, that's right. I have a friend who has a printer, so if you need quotes, they did a good job for us, and it was very cost effective.
So should we come up with a format and get something in the works so we can get it out?
Should we look into putting in a laser printing course up at the high school?
I would also ask if we're going to do the summary, because that is a expense and it is a mailer, so.
It would be a much different expense too, because we'd be mailing it to a lot more places. Do you?
It's Leland and Gray is the same
Oh, yeah,
town.
it is.
It should be the same.
Yeah, you're right. I wasn't thinking. I'm trying to think that we're bigger and more global now, and we always were.
Bob, who coordinates the publishing within?
Well, because it was a Leland and Gray publication, Sue Haskins, my administrative assistant, and I did it. I mean, she mostly did it.
So it's something
No,
like
I like part-time.
You said yes, good, yeah.
But because this is a broader thing than that, I wouldn't volunteer her for that necessarily unless so directed.
So it could be a collaboration, as you mentioned, of all the principals, admins.
Right.
And then, yeah, I think the voice of everybody in the district is very important.
Who would be the right person to task with that in your office?
I did the superintendent's office.
He saw it coming.
As well as for this.
So my initial thoughts are we should play to the strengths of the people that know what they're doing.
Ah, back to Sue Haskins. Nicely done.
And then augment those skills and that strength with the voices of the three elementary.
So we printed 500 at a cost of $2,270 last year.
I mean, I think I'd use that as a template and then add in specific elementary. And then
No, we did a 4-page budget summary.
Well, that came from central office, I think, right? That didn't come from us.
Budget summary?
Yeah.
Wasn't the budget in here?
It was, but they're asking about the other mailing.
Yeah, we didn't do a mailing last year.
That's only when you can't get the budget in.
Right. That was in previous years that didn't
We didn't do a
happen.
budget summary last year?
We haven't done
It was in the report.
That's not true, we've had them.
We've
No, no,
we've done them
no, no.
both in the past,
In
but
two-
did we
last-
skip it?
Not since I've been here.
Not
have
since
I
I've been here.
Heard that
Well,
we
it didn't
do
come out of the central office, it came out of Leland and Gray.
Okay.
Central office never did it.
I haven't done it since I've been here.
Okay, we've stopped doing those. I'll have to go back and look.
So meeting last year though.
Bill, just to make it back to Bob.
Right, so
we're over here now.
between Bill and
This is
Bob.
the reward for being the watchdog of the.
Yeah.
It's because you're
just so good.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Was that a motion or like?
It's just
You have
direction.
a logo? You guys have a logo?
Yeah. On the website, there's a logo.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Come on now.
Yeah, there's a logo on
It's
the
a river.
website.
It's kind of
No, everyone's
I can send you the link.
Yeah,
I know invented it.
I think that Mr. Tebow and I can collaboratively
That'd be great.
work together with our fellow elementary school principals to create a product and a timeline.
That'd be great.
Without
Well,
overtaxing.
usually every principal writes one for the town report
Exactly.
anyway.
Right.
Just a collection.
Just need to
Typically,
make the
time
format.
was in January.
So just give them a
Well,
deadline.
that was my concern,
The
is the
3 other
timeline of
letters
publishing.
in one budget.
We don't have the annual meeting.
Yeah, we're later than Leland and Gray.
So we're gonna be okay.
So we're going to be okay. is my
Yes.
point, yes.
Plenty of time.
We do
All right.
All right. Any more questions? Any more thoughts, folks? All right. Thanks, Bob.
Anything else you want to bring up, Bob?
I didn't have the heart to ask it that way, but I thought it.
Did you have a complaint about snow removal or something?
Okay, so first look at the budget.
Okay.
Lori, Bill, I don't know which one of you's going first.
We're tag teaming.
I thought so.
All right. You were gonna go first?
No, you were gonna do the process.
All right.
And then I was gonna do the narrative,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
I just forgot that. Okay, so first I want to talk about the overall process that I went through to combine all the budgets and then how to read the budget when it gets in front of you. So we took, of course, all of the budgets and combined them into the different areas of the budget. So the budget is going to look a little bit different, well, a lot different than what you're used to. It's going to be set up in a level of education. So your pre-K is your first level, and then your elementary, and then your secondary, and then there's also a West River section, which is basically where we don't need to report it to the state by building, or if it makes sense and it's a district-wide cost. So transportation, for instance, right? We don't need to break that out by school. The state doesn't look at it that way. We can do that as a West River expense. So what's next in the process? So after you would review the initial draft that you'll see tonight, then the next step for me is to start to look at, we'll hopefully have our audits back. We'll start to look at the audited 18 actuals and see where we're coming out, see if I need to make any adjustments in this budget based on those actuals. And then also look at fiscal year 19, the year that the current budgets are in now, and see where we are coming out on those. So that's the next 2 steps in that process. There'll be updates coming from the AOE. We have the December 1st commissioner's letter that will come out, and so there'll be different numbers in that I need to incorporate into this budget. Vocational career centers, their 6-year average, those will come out later, and so that'll be updated. And then hopefully by the next time we meet, I'll have some estimated revenues for you and come up with an estimated tax rate. So, of course, that's where everybody wants to know is what is the tax rate implications of the budget, and we're just not there yet. There's too many unknowns. Equalized pupils are a big unknown, and those will not be out until probably the end of December. So we're looking at a January budget vote. So probably we need a drop-dead budget vote by the end of January. So that's where we're at. So I'm going to let Bill talk about the narrative while I pass out the budget.
All right, so to give you a high-level look at, before you get into the budget. I'll come over here. So this is the first time that we've created a joint budget, and the charge from the West River Board wasn't super specific. It was to respect the vision, the values, and the goals, and have a 4% decrease, a 4% increase, or do the best you can. And so with that, we set to work. The first thing I did is I met with Principal Tebow, looking at our declining enrollment over the last couple of years. I've published those numbers for you there. I gave Bob the directive to build a budget to the best of his ability, creating a fully functional 6th through 8th middle school and a 9th through 12th high school, limiting any loss of service to students as much as possible while being fiscally responsible. And so Bob did a phenomenal job of giving you all a look that you're going to see tonight. A couple things I just wanted to point out is that during the last 2+ years since our team has really come together here, we've been diving deep into the secondary system of proficiency-based learning, proficiency-based grade requirements, our new supervision and evaluation system, which takes a lot of work, a lot of depth, a lot of research, and we've had a lot of support at Leland and Gray over those years. We've had 2 instructional coaches in FY18. We have 1 instructional coach this year, and we will not be having an instructional coach in our draft budget next year. All those responsibilities will be put on the current administrative team. Luckily, we do have a very talented addition to our administrative team this year in our Dean of Academics and Innovation. Overall, this draft includes the decrease of a 0.75 FTE of service. It increases 2 FTEs of middle school teachers, and it reduces a half-time English, half-time science, 0.25 math, 0.25 family and consumer science, and, I'm sorry?
0.55.
A 0.5, I'm sorry, and a full instructional coach. And then just other issues to consider that has been really creeping up in the past 30 days is the boiler here at this building could go tonight.
We'll get to more of that in the...
We'll get more to that in a deeper schedule. In the elementary world, I just want to caution everybody, this is before school choice happens. So until school choice happens and we see where parents have elected to have their students attend, we won't know what the exact staffing numbers will look like for administration, for teachers, for specials. That will all have to be decided once we see where everybody kind of lands. So what we did is we budgeted based on what we know now. So on the 21st of December, school choice will end. We have the lottery on January 8th, but I'll have a pretty good idea of what kind of staffing will be necessary to fulfill our services to our elementary schools. But I don't know that now. But just looking at what we're doing now, you can see that we're doing a reallocation of an FTE, which is going to drop what it looks like locally, but it's being picked up by the consolidated federal grant of an academic support teacher at the early elementary grades, where we get the most bang for our buck in the most intervention at the earliest time when the gaps are the smallest. This also does include adding the 4-year-old pre-K full day for all of our students. Continues the pilot of 3-year-old full day pre-K in Townsend. It adds school choice for our parents. And just based on our early results of speaking with home study families, it could have the possible addition of 10 to 20 students in the elementary level that are currently not in our system. This budget does this budget does reflect the engineering studies that were all commissioned for all the work that has been suggested to be done by the end of this proposed budget's timeline. So that includes deferred maintenance and it includes current maintenance, all on a capital plan of 20 years. This also does include, after our last meeting, providing universal meals under Provision 2 for all students. Good? Any quick questions on that? Lori's going to kind of dive deep into the numbers here, but I wanted to give you just kind of a broad overview. All right?
Very good.
Thank you. All right, so as you can see from the summary data sheet that, the budget is up $1.1 million over last year's combined budgets. And so to give you a little bit of context, I want you to think back to when I did the tax talk, which was, 3 months ago or so. And I had projected that if nothing changed in the budget, all of your budgets combined, that the budget would be 11.4 million, round numbers here. Then we had offsetting revenues and we came up with a cost per student and basically worked it all the way down, if you remember the graphics, to basically a $1.92 tax rate. Okay, so here we are with your combined budgets in fiscal year 19 of 11.2. Okay, I was projecting if nothing else had changed and we just did negotiated increases and the healthcare increases, that it would be 11.4, and that gave you a $1.92 tax rate, and that was with the incentive. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind as we're talking through this. So we're coming in at almost 10% increase in this budget, and basically the breakdowns are in the bottom of the section, the summary data. The health, the salary increase and the health increase, those are knowns that happen every year. We have the Provision 2 that we decided on, and then the building operations, which is what Bill was talking about. So that's for fiscal year 18, 19, and 20, based on the studies, the engineering studies that were done, is what should be in here. Now, side note to that, we also have a failing boiler at Leland and Gray. So I just want everybody to keep that in mind as we talk through that. That doesn't include a failing boiler. Okay, that's just the yearly things that should have been done over the last 3 years and to be done. The assessments, these are what you come in from Wyndham Central's budget. The biggest increase was in special ed and early ed, the EEE, or early childhood special ed. So those were the biggest increase in all of those. And then we had a little bit of a decrease in the audit expense, so that was a nice little decrease there, but a decrease nevertheless. So that's the summary sheet. And then we have the, next you'll have this summary budget. So this is a budget that basically is all the different departments, again, broken down by the different levels. So you have your pre-K, your elementary, secondary, and then the location-wide. And all of these documents for the public will be up on the website. Just for sake of printing and that type of thing, we print all the detail budget, but the board needs to look at the detail for right now. And then there's a couple of graphics here, which is just basically your major expenses. And you can see that, you know, the building operations is 13% of the total budget. Salaries and benefits are about 50% of the total budget. And then the assessments and purchase services are 30%. And then you have this little sliver that's other, that are supplies and things like that. And then the next graphic is just a, it's a graphic that shows the inner circle is what percent of the budget the each level has, and then the outer circle is the percentage of the students, just to give it some context. And then you have the deep dive into the, and I know that there may be questions tonight, but people are going to need to review it. And, you know, because of the nature of pulling all the budgets together into a new system, new accounting system with new account codes, I didn't get it out ahead of time, So are there any questions off, you know, just off the bat?
Just one, when you projected the, if it stays the same, the $1.92, would that include, because I remember that the governor used one-time money this year to defer some of our tax increase, so how would that apply here?
It doesn't.
It doesn't include it, so that gets added on, basically?
It's going to be more.
No. Could be more, right?
I mean, it depends on, so what the governor did was to increase the yield, which lowered the tax rate. So the yield will be coming out fairly soon of what the projected yield is. And it's actually going to be somewhere in the vicinity of about $10,100 roughly. So that's about where it ended up. It's a little lower than where it ended up last year, but not significantly. So yes, it'll be a little bit of an increase, but not a major driver.
Okay.
Yes.
I have a question. It looks like the new food program is figured in here. Was that voted by the board that was definitely going to be a yes, or was that something that the people were going to vote on? I'm confused by that, because at the last meeting it was something that was going to be discussed, but it looks like it's already in here in the budget.
So the board directed me to put it in the budget, right, for the first draft.
Yeah, we wanted to see what it would look like.
And what about the Journey East piece? I know they said that was for 2 more years, but they talked about putting like a residual or something in there this year. Will that include, has that been somewhere in this already, or is that going to be in addition to?
So the $31,000, that's the local contribution that Jesse was talking about, that is in this budget. So anything that...
making up the 40s.
Right, not making up the 40. That's the normal contribution that we make locally to support the program.
And that's always been in there?
It's varied between year and year, so on an off year it might be 18,000, and on a year that they go it's 31. So it's 31 this year.
So when the people vote on this budget, do they vote on just the budget, or can they vote on certain pieces saying, I don't want the food for everyone, I don't want the Journey East
You
for
vote on the
everyone"?
entire budget.
Yeah.
There's no line item veto.
Okay. But this budget includes those things?
It does.
Yes. I mean, I know everybody wants a Phoebe.
Hi, Phoebe Connolly, Newfane. Just
Thank
curious
you.
about this guy, the sort of itemized one.
The summary?
Yes, the summary, thank you. It says elementary, K through 6, secondary 7 through 12. Does that account for the 6th grade coming to Leland and Gray?
It does, yeah. It's so the system that is.
Oh, gotcha.
The system shows it as secondary 7 through 12, but yes, that's a great to point out, Phoebe. Is it for me, the question, or are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's an observation more than anything, and maybe just give me some kind of explanation. If I'm looking at the summary right, the elementary portion, K through 6, right?
K through, no, the K through 5.
So where it says K through 6 on here?
That's what she just asked.
Right, so the new system that we are using for the accounting system that's the way it has it in the system. And so I haven't figured out how to override the system yet to change those, but it is K through 5.
Yeah.
And then 6 through 12.
So I was going to say if it was K through 6, but if it's K through 5, that's fine. 6 grades or 7 grades in 3 different buildings cost about $4 million versus 6 grades at the high school in 1 building costs $5.3 million. Why? Why is it so much more?
There's more students proportionally, and in the elementary school, there's a teacher for a grade. Whereas in high school, you have a math teacher, an English teacher, a history, social studies teacher, a health teacher, a physical education teacher. You employ a lot more teachers to teach different areas than you do in elementary school, where it's the majority of it is 1 teacher per classroom, or even 1 teacher for a combined classroom. Normally, I wouldn't even read texts during the meeting, but I just got a text from a board member who left the Leland and Gray meeting, and I quote, "The roads are horrific. I just got home." So FYI, folks, apparently the roads are horrific.
When I came in, they were bad.
It's snowing like crazy. Just a public service announcement. Yes, go ahead.
I have a question, and maybe this is what Sue Jones was talking about. I see on here that the consumer science is down to nothing, and I'm wondering why it is that we can justify putting in the $50,000 to feed all the kids, but we can't pay for a class that teaches them to feed themselves. Or balance their checkbook, or change their tire, or do their taxes, or file a job application.
So how with the reduction in consumer science, how is that working out in the shift of things?
Right, so as Bill mentioned, he had charged me with figuring out how to take on the 6th grade without adding staff, was the challenge. And so to find the 2 FTEs necessary to staff the 6th grade, which was the plan that we presented, that you guys adopted, to have 2 6th grade teachers. Part of it was just finding spaces where I could make those reductions with trying to find minimal impact to kids. The English, math, and science reductions are able to pull off. Very hopeful that because of the diminishing class sizes, I can get away with fewer sections of things. For example, the junior class had 55 kids. You would need maybe 3 sections of English, but if the sophomores only have 40, you might only need 2 sections of English. So thinking about as the bigger classes move on, trying to how to downsize that. Not reducing AP offering, because that was on your value statement, not reducing other things that were up here. Maybe having some bigger classes and maybe having some electives rotate from year to year was the thought on those core courses, how to absorb those reductions at the high school level and those things. With the consumer science, it was really a function of what and that wasn't sufficient. I didn't get to the number I needed to get to with just those. So with consumer science became sort of the program that was at the high school level involved the fewest number of kids. So I did a little bit of a study around how many kids have taken coursework in that family consumer science program at the high school level, and over the last 5 years we've averaged about 7 students per year.
How many? What was the number?
7.
7.
7 per year?
So as far as just thinking of like the number of students impacted and the cost, it was really, I mean, there's no good choices when you're talking about taking away programming, obviously, but trying to find the area that had the smallest impact as far as the numbers of kids who traditionally have taken that programming.
7 per year or 7 per semester?
7 per year at the high school level. Now at the middle school level, family consumer science has had more students because it's been part of the exploratory rotation. But at the high school level, it's been very, very small.
So is it, but it's not going to be at the middle, it is at the middle school level continuing, or is it?
So
those skills are.
I would say at this point, so this gets into a little bit around staffing, but my family consumer science teacher is dual licensed in health education. And so the health education component would remain. It's unclear to me as of right now whether I would need a full 0.5 to fund or to cover the health at the high school level that I would need. There's a possibility I might be able to sneak in a section of consumer science depending on what the health ed numbers look like and how many sections of that I need and how many kids are taking it. I mean, it's a requirement, so everyone has to take it. But so there's questions that could play out. So with the remaining sliver of that staff member's FTE that's remaining after the health is used up of the remaining 0.5, I potentially could offer still something either at the middle or high school level, but it would be a much shrunk down version of what we currently offer. But I don't know how that will play out yet.
You have a question?
I have a question. I was just curious, without this consumer science portion, what exists for options if somebody wants like real world learning versus like academic book learning? I'm probably using all the wrong words, but what's the choice? What's the thing out there?
So what else do we have?
Right, what can you do? How do you get this knowledge if you don't take consumer science?
Well, that specific knowledge or knowledge outside of the traditional core subjects? What are you asking?
Both, I guess.
Yeah. So as far as like the culinary sciences or areas that are considered consumer science, I would say that they're not going to get that probably anywhere else. I'll be honest. I mean, that's the nature of what it is. To answer the other part of the question is we still have a variety of other elective offerings. We have woodworking, we have a computer technology program, not to mention art, music, oral language. So there's other things that we have where kids can explore other types of things. But as far as that area, yeah, that would be it.
And then I guess as a follow-up to that, I guess it might go along with what you were just answering for the middle school, but trying to incorporate some of that into the personal development or whatever part of what's going on currently in the middle school.
Right. Yeah, I think there's an element, I mean, and the teacher could probably speak more thoroughly to what her curriculum has been in the years that she's been doing it. I think there's been forays into career exploration for sure, which we now our work-based learning program is doing and the personal development course is doing. There have been areas of financial literacy explored. We're going to actually bring back the consumer math class to address that gap. We'll be taught by a certified math teacher. And so we're hoping that'll cover that gap. So there's other areas, but are there going to be gaps? Yeah, you can't eliminate a program and not have gaps. I mean, that's the nature of this kind of decision, is that you're looking for a reduction that can have the smallest impact around the numbers of kids. But there's an impact. There's no way around that.
Go ahead.
So when we talked about the 6th grade move, we were all, it seemed to be presented that it wouldn't affect the high schoolers as much, which is why Wyndham was not included in the vote. And you're now telling us that there are certain items in the budget that are being affected by it for the high schoolers. Can you please go down the list and let me know, or let us know, what other items there were? You kind of briefly went over as you were discussing it, but if you could just list them off. You got the consumer science. Where else did we take a hit on that?
The reductions are in 0.5 in English at the high school, a 0.25 in math at the high school, and a 0.5 in science at the high school.
And those were all due to the 6th grade move.
To absorb 2.0 FTEs, yep. It's my belief.
Ouch.
Thank you.
It's my belief that those reductions, those 3, will not reduce what we can offer our kids. It will mean that there's fewer sections of things, and it might mean that the class sizes bump up from low teens to high teens, or even maybe 20. I don't consider that to be excessively large. So I feel like those reductions can be done in a way that doesn't impact high school students. I think the FACS one is the only place that it impacts high school students. FACS, the Family and Consumer Science, yep, FACS is what we call it, FACS, yep. And like I said, that's where the 7 average for the last 5 years is where I try to find the smallest number of places.
Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
So,
I got you.
I'd like to point out that these reductions are going to happen anyway. Look at our student enrollment. 304, 274, 288. So these reductions at the high school, they had to happen anyway. If anything, we're probably saving programming at this point. So to say that these reductions are directly related to the 6th grade is misleading. It's not based in fact. These reductions are a direct result of reduced student enrollment. Let's be realistic. You can't go from 300 to 274 students and have the same programming you did the year before. That's a huge chunk of students, and I don't know what FY20 would be without the 6th grade.
It would be 258.
258, that's 50 students in 2 years. Let's not, put things out to the public that are completely misleading. This is not the 6th grade move. This is declining student enrollment. Anybody that wants to kind of pin it on the 6th grade move, all you're doing is trying to paint a picture to confuse the public. We lost 50 students in 2 years.
Had said. The way he
And that's why I want to
presented it
clarify
was
for the
so I just-
public that this is what it really is declining enrollment.
I just wanted clarity.
But I think I had one behind you first, right? You had your hand up, and then
My
we'll go over
question
here, and
was,
then...
is there a mandatory senior survival class that teaches life skills? When I came here, you had to take a class that then folded into consumer science that taught you things that you needed to know to live life, things that I use on a daily basis. I don't use my geometry, I don't use my biology, I don't use my, so many skills that you have to learn, but every day I use what was taught in that class. So it seems like a big, big mistake to remove that.
It's been gone.
Is there such a class?
What I was going to say is when I came here to teach 22
I
years
didn't
ago,
think
and the
so.
class was gone at that point. So it's been gone,
It's been a long time.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's been gone since then.
it's been gone for over 20 years, yeah.
Okay, so the answer to the question is there hasn't been a class like that in over 20 years. So it's not happening. Yeah, yes, go ahead.
Sue Jones, I am the current family and consumer science teacher and health teacher. And as I said in my letter, and some of you have not seen, I think it's a huge disservice to our students to let them graduate without these basic skills. It is not a required class. Once senior survival was eliminated, it became an elective. I've been trying all of my professional career to make it a required class, and I think the board would just, I don't even know the adjectives to use, but it's a huge disservice to our students to put them out into the world without these basic skills.
Go ahead.
The other thing I was just listening to Drew here was talking about it was a disservice to the public to say it's not about the 6th grade move because it's actually saving. And I think that is what we talked about from the very beginning was the whole reason why these 6th graders were getting moved was to save Leland and Gray. And that was part of our...
How would they be saving Leland and Gray exactly?
Because the numbers are going to go up
But
as
the
Drew was
numbers,
just saying?
look at the budget. We're a one district budget. It's all district. It doesn't matter where the child goes to school. The numbers are the same in terms of money for the district. No matter where the child sits, it's one budget. So if they could all go to school in Newbrook and it would be the same as if they went to school in Leland and Gray or Townsend or Jamaica or wherever. It doesn't matter where they sit in terms of the budget numbers.
Then why are we moving them?
Because they get to do opportunity. Art, music, more physical education, health, foreign languages.
Less science.
You're losing less science, you're losing math. They have no physical.
They'll have all the math.
Recess is gone.
We're okay. Anybody else? Okay.
Al.
Al.
Al's got a budget question.
Let's speak to the elephant in the room here, right? So we got all of this the rest of this is elementary. You look at the 732 for building ops.
Right.
And the 265 for assessments. That's $1 million right there.
Right.
Right? And the rest is just.
The rest is just the ebbs and the flows.
Assessments
Yeah.
is special ed, right? So we can't do anything about that, essentially. So the only.
And I know you didn't, obviously, because we don't have an FY19 to compare against, totally makes sense. What percentage, well, I guess I can probably do the math, but that's probably 2.5% of the total increase, the assessments, and then 7.5% in the, 7.5 in the buildings. So, and the rest is just holding your own.
Okay. Go ahead, Drew.
So in that, thank you for bringing this up. This is where I was gonna go next. So $732,000 is in repairs that has been deferred for the previous 2 years.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Yes. And longer, yeah.
That $732 that's in this budget should have been in last year's, part of it in last year's budget, and some of it should have been in this year's budget.
And some of it in the budget before, yes.
So-
Not one building, it's all of them.
Right, so my point is that we're not seeing $1 million increase. We're seeing $732,000 worth of deferred maintenance
Over 4 buildings.
from 4 buildings that we should have dealt with before.
But if that money's been in the budget, where did the money go?
It hasn't been in the budget. No one has put it in the budget to keep things low. They've kicked it down the road. And it's in this budget just to call attention to that. And I know, speaking as, as part of the building committee, I know we started talking about this, and then because of the holiday and the weather, we didn't get one more meeting before this. And I think ultimately the recommendation coming out of the building committee will probably be to defer a large chunk of this again for at least for another year and give us time to look at the what a bond would be to take care of all our facilities, because the engineering reports want somewhere about $4 or $5 million worth of maintenance across the 4 buildings going forward on a 20-year capital plan that we need to start planning for. This is just the catch-up piece.
It doesn't include a $600,000 boiler.
It does not include the boiler that Leland and Gray may have to get in a big hurry. Hopefully we can put together before the next meeting a meeting with some of the building committee people and the engineer and talk about what actually needs to be taken care of now for safety and security of our students and staff versus what we can actually hold off on a year and then look at a bond issue to take care of all of our buildings. But that is a big number, and we're probably gonna have to swallow some of it. We just don't know what it is yet. Okay.
Christina from Townsend. I'm just wondering, I know Wyndham is thinking about leaving and they have their whole plan. How much do they have to pay us for their share of the bond?
They should pay their share.
What's that percentage?
I don't think it's $732,000, that'd be nice.
Like 5%.
I'm just curious, what is the bond and what's left on it?
Or it's based on the ADM.
Yeah.
So.
It's 136,000.
No, I'm sorry. So they have 2.6% of the ADM in total.
And we owe
How much do we
About
list?
$1.2 million, I think.
30,000.
$1.2 million, yeah. I don't have that bond number on my fingertips, but I can get it for you.
Yeah, I would say it's between 30 and 40,000 last time we looked.
So not a lot.
Not 732.
Not
It's not
732? Darn. Okay, so for the, we get to see revisions to this budget to make it, to do things that we want to do. We can, at this point, we need to give our administration direction as to where we want to go with this, what changes we want to see. And we see this again in essentially 2 weeks. You know, do we want to talk about support for Journey East in this year, or do we kick that down the road for another year? I think I can commit to, we could have a building committee meeting and talk about that and get that number worked down to, you know, what we need to safely have our students and staff in the buildings. And is there anything else in this budget that we want to see administration change, massage, work over, add, subtract? Yeah,
Is there a way to, I mean, it sounds like the boiler is going to blow up or whatever. Is there a way to represent that? Should we be thinking about a way to represent that?
Earlier at the Leland and Gray non-meeting, we talked about this with Lori, and there's apparently grant money out there from Wyndham Wood. So we're gonna look into what the grant money is, and then if that goes, that's most likely gonna be a Leland and Gray board this year deficit spend decision. We should definitely, you know, if it doesn't go this year and Leland and Gray doesn't do it, we probably should at least start talking about budgeting for it next year, because it will die. And rather than do it as an emergency, get the grant, get things figured out. You know, is it something we budget for, or is it something we can actually borrow for and then pay on a loan?
That was my question, is it, do we represent it here as a loan? Or do we think about representing it as an amortized cost across however many years we think it would take to pay it off?
My question is, why do you just keep pushing it off?
So Mike.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would hope that you'll take this up as the building committee and have that conversation as part of this under building operations.
Yeah.
I mean, the Leland and Gray board, even though they weren't, we didn't have a quorum, we did say to Lori we wanted her to start the process to get that grant. And she said, sounds like you already started that, made the contact. So that grant is critical to offsetting the cost of this boiler, and I think we're being responsible moving ahead in the way we are, and I hope you'll have that conversation at the building committee level and see what the best path forward is.
Yeah.
And make a recommendation to the board.
Definitely.
Yeah, the grant is a process, and the whole,
right.
It is a process of doing some studies, getting some studies, doing an RFP, so it's not something that, you know, it may be till next year, as long as the boiler's holding out, we're okay. And we do have somewhat of a backup, so.
What's the potential grant fund?
About $150,000.
So we're still looking at potentially.
That's a 25%.
Sure,
grant.
no, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't afford
Just
to
a
not
planner.
do it.
Oh, I know, I get it, yeah.
Right. That's why we're moving forward.
So you'll keep working forward on that, and we'll get a building committee meeting, and we can have some like scenarios for that.
For the next meeting?
For the next meeting.
Oh, that'd be great.
You had a question?
I did, Sean Meyer, Townsend. I was curious if you could speak to the food service line. Does that include all the capital improvements that you're going to have to incorporate to build the infrastructure to support this new program that you decided on last week to roll out?
So yes, it includes the contribution by the taxpayers that fund the food program. So
That's what I'm talking about. He said he needs freezers, you're going to need a vehicle to transport the stuff, you need the hardware, the largeware, the smallware to outfit each kitchen, because the other providers are pulling out. I happen to be in this business, so I know how expensive that is. And $143,000, including the salaries for the people to run it,
So
that
so if
seems
you remember,
kind of light.
So when you were here last time and I was explaining it, so the food service, the revenues that we get from the federal government and from our local food costs or revenue, and the food expenses are in a different fund, okay? So there's always a gap. In Newbrook, there's a gap. Jamaica, there's a gap. Townsend, there's a gap between those two.
Right.
So this represents that gap, or contribution by the local taxpayers. Yeah, it does. It's part of that. So when we build the budget over in the other fund, revenues and expenses, it includes, I think it was $10,000 roughly of startup costs is what we called them because of the company that we currently have owns some of the equipment.
Right. $10,000 does not buy very much equipment. It would buy maybe 3 side-by-side reach-in refrigerators. That's about how far $10,000 goes. So.
Well, there is some equipment now. It's not that we have to buy all the equipment. So there is some equipment that Leland and Gray owns, and Newbrook owns, and Townsend owns.
I'm just throwing that out there because it's something that he tried out. So in reference to that, I see that more as unrealistic.
Does the board understand the food program?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Anything else on the, so you know what you want to do for the next meeting? We'll get the building committee to take care of the 700,000.
Yes.
And
the discussion about the boiler.
And the discussion about the boiler, and we'll address those. And then there weren't any other, yes, go ahead, Alicia.
I'm not very quick this time of night, if anyone else has picked up on it. So is it okay if we have questions in the interim to call up and ask?
Send them to
or
me.
Send them to you?
I'll forward them on.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can the Buildings and Grounds Committee look into building a new building?
Sure.
Would
you want it done by January?
What would that new building be for?
Before the boiler goes?
Like done by December.
No problem.
You want a shed, right?
Oh, no.
What do you want?
You want a superstructure.
Okay. All right, so.
So we can get from town to town.
Moving on from the budget. We had a petition presented to our clerk.
Your letters.
It's gone through the certification process, and so it had the required amount of signatures.
Yep.
We gave it to Bill, who spoke with our attorney, and I'll let you take it from there. We've received advice back on the petition from our attorney.
Sure, so I got a letter today from our attorney. Board, you all have a copy. I'm going to read the last paragraph because I think it is the most succinct, but there's a lot of legalese in there for all of you. Just a couple points before I read the last paragraph is that just some points that are in the legalese is that the 30 days are not statute, so the requirement in the petition of within 30 days of receiving this petition, the board is not bound by that, that it's advisory language, and that this board would be responsible for writing a warning, because the way the warning was written, there's no vote. It's for a vote of the town's electorate regarding sending 6th grade. So it's not like it's not written as a yes or no vote. So just a couple things that the attorney pointed out. But the last paragraph really kind of sums it up, so it's important. Although the article sought by petitioners is not legally required, the school board may, at its discretion, warn an advisory vote on such article. In considering this question, the school board can be mindful of other opportunities and mechanisms for specific stakeholders, including parents and staff,
and the general community to inform the board of their opinions regarding the 6th grade, as well as consideration of time, energy, and cost of conducting a special meeting by Australian ballot for the school district for a matter that is non-binding and advisory in nature only. If you have any questions, he'll follow up on that. But there's 4 or 5 paragraphs of the details of going through all the precedent-setting cases. The most recent one was through the Vermont Supreme Court, which was just completed this year, 2018. Skiff v. South Burlington School District. So, you guys asked me to contact the attorney. I contacted the attorney. He sent this back to me. I think the last paragraph is kind of the most instructive, but you guys have all the detail.
So, after you've read the letter, questions, essentially we, as a board, are not obligated by statute to do anything, really. Supreme Court held that we don't have to. And the other caution in the last paragraph really is setting the precedent. The ruling that we don't have to actually move forward with any kind of a vote in response to this petition is based on legal precedent, and we would be setting a precedent of this board where we would do that. So I'm looking at you guys. What do you want to do next?
It also mentions cost. Did you?
I spoke with our clerk, who is also a town clerk. She estimated that it would be somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000 to warn and pay the clerks to go through the process of collecting the ballot. We'd have to pay that didn't include having our attorney draft the actual warning language and go through that. So, somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000 is probably a reasonable estimate of the cost of holding the vote.
So why not just hold a vote, if you do hold a vote, at the annual meeting, when you vote on the budget? Instead of warning a special meeting, warn a special article. Then the cost is already out there.
We'd still incur the extra legal costs of having our attorney draft the warning. But that would piggyback the costs on that.
Yeah, but it's not going to be $5,000–6,000.
But that we have the larger question of, if we do, then are we agreeing to be bound by the results of that vote?
I don't know. We represent. This is who we represent. These are the people we represent.
But we're elected to make these decisions. That's how the democracy works. Mm-hmm. And the board is supposed to make these decisions and deliberate and move forward with this, and not necessarily then go back out and hold public opinion polls to do its thing. So, yeah, go ahead.
I've tried very hard to listen to the people of Brookline and everybody else in the surrounding communities in Newbrook on this and how they feel. And I would have to alert the board that from the people that I've spoken with, that this is not just a decision for them. Since the board put in policy that it's school choice, we really believe in school choice, we really believe in the parents' ability to decide what is best for their child. A lot of people feel that this is a two-faced move, that they would like to be able to decide what's best for their child as part of a school choice on where to go for 6th grade. And they feel so passionately about it that it would involve, even though it might have worked out differently in the courts already, it could include some court costs to us. Whether we win or lose, the court costs would probably be higher than just holding a vote and just letting everybody put it to bed. It'd be really nice to just have a clear decision.
Anybody else on the board? All right, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say that what we're really asking the board to do is to look at this petition as not another thorn in the side of progress, but instead an opportunity to get community buy-in, or to find out you don't have it, one or the other. Because it may not be binding, but what is binding is the vote on the budget. And you got a lot of disgruntled people out there, and if you don't get them to buy into this thing, you're gonna have bigger problems down the road. And that's not a threat, I'm just stating facts of what's going on out there. When Guilford moved to Brattleboro, they held a vote, moving their 7th and 8th graders there. The board didn't decide it by themselves.
Mike?
I just want to add on to that. I think we should warn the vote, and I think this is part of, like, when we wanted to do the 6th grade, when we talked about pre-K, we did a survey, and we found out, hey, people really supported this. And then I remember Alicia and I were trying to get a survey on the 6th grade move, and some of the board members didn't want to have that cut and dry answer. So I think this is kind of the price for not doing it a couple months ago when we could have done it for a lot cheaper. You know, I think we do want community buy-in. So if we want community buy-in, a large amount of voters have said to us, we're not happy with this. I think we should hear them.
I don't think we want to, we're elected, go ahead, Rick.
Rick Hagee from Townsend. I would kind of like to emphasize how government works to people. These people have been elected to make decisions. You cannot, you just can't contradict every decision they make. If you want to change something, some of those seats are coming up for election. If buckle down, run for office, get on the board, and do it. Don't just spend all your time out here in the audience second guessing what they're trying to do. That's not how things work. I know it's how things work these days, but it's not how they're supposed to work. If you want to change things, you run for office. You lose, that means people didn't want you. That's the way it works.
Thank you.
Except there's things called lobbyists. No, they do the same things that what we're trying to do.
Not in town, not in these towns. There aren't any lobbyists in these towns.
That's essentially what it is. We're lobbying our viewpoint, which happens every. All right.
Hey, we're not having a discussion in the audience. We're not. Okay. You can go out in the hall and have that, but thank you. You want to speak, Alicia?
Sure. I think it's hard for everybody because I recognize how the board has wrestled with this. And I recognize the parents, and yes, there's a democratic way, and there's a responsibility, and there's hard decisions to make, and I really respect everybody for making hard decisions and being here at a hard time, even especially since we're not getting any financial accountability this year for it. But that accountability, financial gain, nobody's getting paid this year for all this work that you're doing. So I appreciate that. I do think there's a certain amount of marketing or buy-in that does have to happen. What are we willing, I mean, is it too much of a headache to have a vote for the public to gain their trust on a decision about their children? Do we want our towns to not trust the school board with their most precious possession because they don't feel listened to? So I think that that's the hard part. We have a business decision to make, but there is a lot of emotional repercussion for people as a parent. It's about their child and can they trust the leaders that they have elected for their children. And I think that that is something we can't just brush aside. And in the marketing and the buy-in and the support in all the steps that we're going to be taking to move forward from here, I think we need to do a little better job. And if a vote does it, and it's clear as day to everybody at the end of it, I think that is a really nice, you know, neat bow to tie it all up in. I'd be willing to go through that headache.
How many voters are there in the Union Towns?
3,200.
Okay. So not even close to a majority with what we got for signatures.
They needed 191 signatures
I'm just
to
thinking of
make 5%.
Of having the support from the towns. that
Okay.
They don't want this.
I want to just chime in here when you get a chance.
Go ahead.
Okay. Now, we're not talking about setting a precedence here because we already had a precedence at Leland and Gray a couple of years back when the Leland and Gray board came up with a budget and they were going to remove one position, I think it was social worker, right?
We didn't take that to a vote, Ken.
No, wait, whoa, I'm not, wait, hang
board
on.
vote.
The board made a decision they were gonna take it out. They had a public outcry of 54 people at a meeting. 54 people. And the board reversed their decision from 54 people from the same five towns.
The board made another decision, exactly.
Okay, the board made it from 54 people.
Is this
Wait a
board
minute,
going to
wait
make
a
another
minute.
decision?
This board made a decision. Not 54 people came out, but over 200 people came out.
198.
Okay. No. Was there 200 and something signatures on them?
There were 198 certified signatures.
198 certified, fine, whatever. So over 3 times the amount in the same district, the same 5 towns. Okay? Over 3 times the amount, come out with a decision, or say they don't like the decision that this board is making, and we just turn away from it and completely ignore it without any discussion.
We've discussed this and discussed this and discussed this.
We haven't discussed this.
In fact, we had a motion on the floor to reconsider this. We've been down this road.
Yes, that reconsideration vote was a joke.
That was the
That was 2 minutes worth of talk right here, and we were asked to look into it. Look into the numbers, look into how it affects, look into these studies. Totally disregarded everybody's concerns, completely disregarded them. I don't care what you say, that's what was done.
That's your opinion, but if
that's
make
a
a
fact.
motion. Make a motion. No, it's your opinion.
No, that was a fact.
But go ahead, make a motion, and let's see what happens this
Okay.
time.
Fine. I can't make a motion.
Why?
Because a motion has to be made on something that was decided, but it has to be done by somebody who voted for it.
No, don't make a motion to reconsider.
Okay, I make a motion that we put this to a vote on the same night as the budget. That's the motion.
Same day, Australian ballot.
Drew, give me a little bit clearer on this motion. Put this to a vote. Be very specific. Because we had this discussion 2 meetings ago where we tried to figure out what the motion really meant. So let's be very clear what we're voting on.
Right. That's what you would like. But using the attorney's words is probably the way you'd want to.
Yeah, probably with the attorney's word, right? Fine principle.
2.
Okay.
Right, you need that phrase.
To send 6th grade to Leland and Gray.
You got to get that phrase in there.
Okay? Do we want to send 6th graders to Leland and Gray? Yes or no? Simple vote.
As an opinion poll or as a policy?
No, as a vote.
We can't.
The vote is non-binding.
Right, so we can do an opinion poll. If you'd like to do if you're putting a motion up for an opinion poll.
No, I'm putting a motion up for an Australian ballot the night of the budget vote.
The day of our budget vote.
Right.
That would be a non-binding advisory?
No. No.
Lawyers
the vote is
already
by
said it can't be
statute
binding.
non-binding advisory.
Right, so you just have to be clear that we have no more voting on. This is a non-binding advisory vote on the day of the budget by Australian ballot.
Asking whether or not we should send our 6th grade students to Leland and Gray Middle School.
I would be compelled to be binded by the result, whichever way it went. That's my personal opinion.
But that's contrary to state statute.
I can't tell you how to vote.
Okay, so,
He gets to make his own motion.
Peter, can you read back that motion for me, please?
Mr. McFadden moved to warn a non-binding advisory vote by Australian ballot on whether to send 6th grade to L&G on the same night as the budget vote.
Same day.
Same day. It's an all-day process.
Well, I'll make the syntax
Okay.
less confusing.
You got advisory into the two things.
Okay. One sec. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay.
So I'm changing it to say a non-binding advisory vote by Australian ballot on the same day as the budget vote on whether to send 6th grade to L&G.
Okay.
Clear?
Yes, thank you. Clear? I think so. Okay. Phoebe?
So I guess, I mean, sorry.
Yeah, okay, Phoebe Connolly, Newfane. So this has nothing to do with the actual motion discussion, it's more the timeline. This budget vote, the Australian ballot budget vote is in March?
Yes, last Thursday in March.
Yeah. I've been present at these meetings, the largest meeting, one of the biggest. I'm just reminding people the biggest topic was we need to know what's happening. Kids need to know what's happening. Teachers need to know what's happening. Schools need to know what's happening. If we're waiting to March, the priority is the students. And if we are saying, hey, you're going to Leland and Gray next year as a 6th grader, oh, just wait, you're going to find out in March whether or not you're going to go to Leland and Gray. When many parents talked about their anxious kids, I am not a parent. I don't have a student in the district, but as somebody who cares about the welfare of students, I feel like having our 6th graders hanging in the wind until March for a public opinion, non-binding poll, in my opinion, is not in the best interest of students.
Thank you. More feedback? Yeah, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just, I don't know, I mean, I know everyone's really passionate about this. The board's passionate about what they want to do, and some of the parents are, and then some of the other parents are passionate on the other side. And I don't think it's a matter of who's better, who's right. I just think that everyone has their own perspective of what's the right thing for whatever side they're fighting for. I guess my question is, what is there to lose? And I mean this from an honest, I'm trying to see it both ways. I'm trying to see it from the other side. What is there to lose by asking, do you want the 6th grades to move or not move? What is the worst thing that can happen? If everybody says no, then we all know that, okay, we have to just, that's the decision, and that's the right decision because that's what everyone thinks. Or if they don't, I guess I don't understand what is the harm of putting it out there and letting that decision to the taxpayers, the parents, the staff, everyone. What is the harm to do that, I guess is my question. That's what I'm trying to figure out and wrap my head around. Why wouldn't that want to be done?
Well, we're elected, as Rick explained, to do that job. And if we give the authority of the board to basically public opinion survey, we're not really doing our jobs. And we set a precedent then. Every time we make a decision as a board that someone doesn't like, you can get 200 signatures, and then it'll go out to a public vote. And whether the board then listens to the public vote, which is by statute purely advisory or not, you're still going to go through that orchestration. I don't like the food program, or I don't like something else, or I don't like how the sports program is run, or whatever, and we'll just it sets a precedent for how this board conducts its business.
And I understand that to a degree. You have a percentage of the voters. It's a decent amount of percentage of the voters. You had 54 before that you listened to. I just don't understand. I can't wrap my head around it. I'm trying to, but I just can't wrap my head around.
You're not giving up your power, Joe. You're fact-finding, you're gathering information, you're trying to get a consensus and build a community. If the board operates only in a vacuum.
Could just wait till I recognize you. I got one here, and then we'll go back to you, and then Christina. Go ahead, Lizzie.
I just want to respond that I'm not a part of the board that had 54 people and changed their mind and whatever that was. Whatever that was. I'm not a part of that, but I do want to say that I know I personally, and I know everybody up here has gone back and forth on this and wrestled with this a lot, and that it has. The numbers of how many people have come forward, like, that matters, but it's not like, well, if there was 54 now and they accepted it, so now you have to accept ours because we have more numbers. But like, that's just, they're not relevant conversations. The conversation would be, did you offer something that changed my mind? And I haven't had anything come forward that I feel compelled to change my mind about. This process, about our decision. And I feel like everything that's been brought forward, pretty much everything that's been brought forward, we have had something where, okay, I feel like that's been addressed, and I feel comfortable with how that's going to be handled. And so it's not that, well, we have more numbers and so you should change your mind, but I haven't been convinced that I should change my mind. And I understand that we are on, everyone has sort of different priorities and it feels strongly about different things and no one's ever going to agree about everything. That's just the nature of things. But I do think that everyone up here has really put immense amounts of thought and consideration and trying to understand where everyone's concerns are and how they'll be addressed, and it's not like we haven't looked at it. So I guess the point of all of that is we just haven't been convinced.
Yeah. You were next, and then we'll go to you.
I'm just gonna, so if we waited till March to redo this vote, which, I mean, I am completely for the sixth graders going over. My thing is we've almost made it, there's a possibility with the new school choice that we've made it so there's no longer room in there may not be room in some of the schools for those sixth graders anymore. I mean, it is it would be too late, like they're gonna reassign all the kids, they're gonna get their new choices. There won't be room. So it kind of would be a vote that.
That's not how the choice policy is constructed.
But what I'm saying is that there wouldn't be the classroom the sixth graders are in. Right now, we have multi-ages in most of the schools, except for Newbrook.
Well, that's not most of the schools.
2 out of most.
No,
That's
2 towns out of 4 towns. How's that?
Schools. 2 out of 3 schools are multi-ages. With the pre-K program, I mean, when we had straight lines, it was pre-K and K together. Right. We're basically making it so there is no longer possibly space for the sixth graders, right, depending on what the school choice looks like.
Understood.
But not true.
You, go ahead.
What I was starting to say earlier when I didn't realize somebody else was going to talk,
yeah,
so I apologize.
Yeah, that's good.
Was that just what she said? We could say the same thing. We're not convinced. We haven't seen everything. But more importantly, as the board, you're not giving up power to allow the community to voice their votes. Then you can act on that as you feel, which you're fully authorized to do. But we're asking you to take it out to the towns and find out if you have the majority. And personally, I'm not going to complain. If there's a majority vote that's in favor of moving the sixth grade here, fine. You don't hear from me again. But what we've always wanted, right from the start, was to take this to the towns and let the people tell you what they want. And then you do with it what you need to do. You cannot, as a board, close a school, right? The town has to vote to do that. If you think about this, you are, in a way, closing a portion of these schools by taking the sixth grades out of them. Without the towns voting on it. So we're just asking you, let us vote. You do with it what you want after that. We can't force you to vote the way we might or might not. That's it.
Thanks. Drew?
Call the question.
Okay. All right. So, question's been called. The motion is to warn the...
Have them read it back.
Yeah, go ahead. Can you read it one more time, Peter, just so I get it right?
Mr. Move to warn a non-binding advisory vote by Australian ballot on the same day as the budget vote on whether to send 6th grade to LNG.
Okay, thank you. So, all in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
There were just 3 ayes, right? I believe?
I believe so.
Okay, so the motion fails. We're not warning it.
Do you have executive session?
Yeah, we don't need an executive session, do we?
We do not.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the minutes of 11:12.
All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
That doesn't need to be seconded.
Okay.
Opposed? Abstentions? Oh, you weren't here. You don't have to. All right, but the ayes have it. Okay, so our next meeting is December 10th at 7 o'clock, right here. It'll be the next look at the budget. And then we're December 17th if we need another look at the budget. I know, you won't be here. Anything else, folks? Make the motion to adjourn before you run out the door.
I make the motion to adjourn because my husband has to go plow. Sorry.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.